On a dark and windy night, a dagger silently pierced through the ice. The person wielding it was none other than Federal Agent Harry. His mission this time was to infiltrate the castle's banquet and steal crucial intelligence. After putting on and testing his communication devices, he planted a remote-controlled bomb outside the castle. Then he opened a bottle of cologne, splashed it on his face, and disguised himself as an honored guest. He then swaggered into the banquet hall, greeting everyone he saw, acting completely natural. No one suspected his identity at all. Following the guidance of his teammate Gibson, he slipped into a room on the second floor. After the soldiers patrolling downstairs left, he climbed along the exterior wall from the balcony and successfully reached the third-floor office. He smoothly installed the network repeater, and the teammates in the mobile command center immediately cracked the computer's anti-copying system. They effortlessly stole a large amount of classified information. At this point, the mission was already more than halfway successful. Harry pretended to have an urgent need to use the restroom, wandering around and barely managing to brush off security. But before he could make a clean exit, the patrolling guards discovered the shattered ice and immediately sounded an alert. Initiating a full lockdown, Gibson noticed the guards were extremely tense and quickly informed Harry to be prepared. It was quite a coincidence that at this moment, Harry ran into a beautiful woman named Juno. As they say, the place where it is most dangerous is also the safest place. He had a sudden inspiration and, instead of hiding, invited Juno to the center of the dance floor. After an elegant tango, not only did Harry evade the security search, but his damn charm also left Juno completely enchanted. Before leaving, she proactively handed her his business card, hoping for another encounter with Harry. Thinking he could slip away quietly, he was unexpectedly stopped by a guard who demanded to see his invitation. It seemed like he had to get a bit rough. Under the cover of an explosion, Harry quickly dashed towards the extraction point. The guards immediately released 2 dogs to hunt him down. If it were anyone else, they would have been scared out of their wits on the spot. But for Harry, this was a piece of cake. Seeing the dogs bewildered, the guards got desperate and tried to use deadly force. They began firing wildly in Harry's direction. He remained completely calm, pulled out his weapon, and with his pinpoint accuracy, took down several pursuers in an instant. Meanwhile, Gibson was driving the mobile command vehicle, rushing to the rendezvous point to pick up his teammate, but the icy road made it incredibly difficult to maneuver. He could only hope that Harry could hold out a little longer. Harry, weaving through a hail of bullets, quickly took cover in a nearby forest, hoping to conceal his movements. Unexpectedly, the enemy reacted quickly and had already deployed an elite ski special forces team, charging at him with unstoppable force. Harry realized that simply running away would eventually get him riddled with bullets, so he took cover behind a large tree and fired back. Thanks to his protagonist's luck, he miraculously made it to the rendezvous point without a scratch, and even his hairstyle remained perfectly intact. To show off his sharpshooting skills with the few remaining bullets, Harry, along with his 2 teammates, flew back to New York overnight after successfully completing the mission. It turned out they belonged to a secret organization called Omega, specializing in handling tricky terrorist threats. In everyday life, they posed as computer salesmen, a cover so convincing that even Harry's wife, Helen, and daughter, Dana, were unaware of the truth. His demanding job kept him away from his family, straining his relationship with his wife and disappointing his daughter, Dana. Every time he thought he'd picked out the perfect gift, Dana would immediately throw it in the trash, hinting at the emotional conflicts to come in the story. From the classified information they retrieved, they discovered that an arms dealer named Khaled had just received a $100 million transfer from the International Commercial Bank. It was highly likely that a terrorist organization had purchased a deadly weapon, and just a week ago, a nuclear superpower happened to lose 2 nuclear warheads. They suspected that the terrorist organization had already bought these warheads with plans to launch an attack on US soil. But up to now, this was all conjecture, with no solid evidence to confirm it. The director ordered them to take action, insisting they find the nukes before any attack could occur. After several days of intense investigation, Gibson found a key lead in the data. Khaled had transferred $2 million to Juno, suggesting a definite connection between the two. Background checks revealed that Juno was an antique dealer and was currently in her New York office. When Harry heard this, he came up with an idea. He disguised himself as the owner of an art company and approached Juno, pretending to be interested in buying some antiques. As soon as they met, he started flattering her, putting her at ease. Juno, who already had a good impression of him, let her guard down, and Harry began subtly probing for information. Just as they were enjoying their conversation, a pair of eyes was secretly watching Harry. After he left, the man approached Juno to have a word with her. Without warning, he raised his hand and slapped her hard across the face. It turned out this man was named Aziz, and he was the leader of a terrorist organization. He was the one who had bought the nuclear warheads from Khaled. Juno had merely used her antique trading business as a cover to help Aziz transport the warheads to their designated location. Aziz, being highly suspicious by nature, didn't want any mistakes before launching the attack. Adhering to the philosophy of better safe than sorry, he decided to eliminate any potential risks. That very night, he personally led a team to follow Harry and Gibson after work, intending to remove them as a threat once and for all. But the two experienced agents quickly noticed they were being tailed. After a brief discussion, Harry decided to play along and lure the enemy out into the open. Soon, Gibson parked the car by the roadside, and Harry pretended to be unaware as he walked toward a mall across the street. As expected, Aziz sent two of his men after Harry while he stayed in the car, waiting for good news. Completely oblivious that he was about to walk into a trap, Harry placed a pack of cigarettes in the restroom, positioning the miniature camera on it to face the urinal. When Aziz's henchman burst in with a gun, Harry could see his every move through the camera feed on his sunglasses. Just as the man raised his gun to take a shot, Harry swiftly dodged and knocked the weapon out of his hand with lightning speed. The other assassin, seeing this, quickly drew a submachine gun, but Harry had already gained the upper hand. Seeing his comrade killed, the burly man flew into a rage. He swung his fists with the force of a storm, leaving Harry completely unable to counterattack. Though Harry could take a beating, the old man on the toilet was scared out of his wits. To finish Harry off quickly, the brute threw all caution to the wind and pulled out a dagger. Harry's shirt was instantly torn open, and he could bear it no longer. Seizing the opportunity, he launched a violent counterattack. The brute was eventually subdued and captured alive. Harry knew that if he could get him back to headquarters, they would definitely extract valuable information. But just as Harry was about to leave, Aziz, not trusting his men, came in himself, carrying a rifle, ready to kill. The crazed Aziz didn't want to take any chances. Without caring if there were other people around, he started firing wildly into each stall. As he went around checking each one, Harry suddenly emerged and lunged for his pistol. After getting up, he and Aziz engaged in an intense shootout. Both of Aziz's henchmen were dead, so Aziz turned and ran, planning his next move. The bathroom was left in ruins after the battle, with only the old man trembling in the wreckage. Aziz burst through a window and landed on the street, where he ran into Gibson, who had arrived for support. But before could shoot, he came under heavy fire. Out of bullets, Aziz quickly hijacked a motorcycle and weaved through the streets, causing several traffic accidents as he tried to escape in the chaos. Harry wasn't about to let this prey get away. It just so happened that a mounted police officer was passing by. After a friendly greeting, Harry commandeered the horse. Seeing this, Aziz's heart sank. It seemed today was going to be a real nightmare, with Harry and the others in hot pursuit. Aziz found himself with nowhere to run and had no choice but to dart into a hotel. Thinking he could finally shake off his pursuers, he didn't expect Harry to follow him in on horseback. The absurd sight left the hotel guests dumbfounded. After a few minutes of chasing, Aziz reached the front entrance of the hotel first. Just as he was about to merge onto the main street, Gibson and his partner arrived to block his path. In desperation, Aziz turned the motorcycle around and charged into the elevator, taking a female guest hostage. Harry, who arrived just in time, couldn't make any rash moves. He watched Aziz head to the top floor, then squeezed himself and the horse into another elevator. Upon reaching the top floor,
That's a fine animal.
Aziz desperately realized that there seemed to be no escape route. As Harry's elevator arrived at the top, Aziz made a reckless decision. He revved the motorcycle's throttle to the max and crashed through the glass, flying towards the building next door. Fate was on his side as he plunged into a swimming pool, miraculously surviving the fall. This scene immediately sparked Harry's competitive spirit. He made the unthinkable decision to mimic Aziz's crazy stunt. However, as he spurred his horse to jump, the animal got cold feet and suddenly stopped. The sudden inertia flung Harry forward, but luckily, he grabbed onto the reins with his left hand. After calming himself down, Harry signaled the horse to drag him slowly back. He barely managed to climb back from the brink of disaster. When he looked again at the opposite rooftop, Aziz had already vanished without a trace. Losing track of Aziz left Harry extremely frustrated. When he finally made his way home in the pouring rain late at night, he found his wife still waiting for him. It turned out that today was his birthday, and Helen and Dana had prepared a cake and a party with great care. only for Harry to miss it once again. He sensed the anger in his wife's heart, but he couldn't explain to her what had happened that night. Their already strained relationship instantly hit rock bottom. After enduring a long, sleepless night, Harry threw himself back into work. He spent hours combing through the database until he finally found detailed information on Aziz. Aziz was a fanatic extremist whose terrorist organization had carried out multiple bombings, resulting in the deaths of hundreds of innocent civilians. If the nuclear warheads were in his hands, the consequences would be unimaginable. Harry had to find his hideout, but before that, he had one more important thing to do. Without informing Helen, he secretly went to her office. He planned to invite her out for a fancy dinner to try and mend their relationship, but as soon as he walked into her office, he discovered something that made his heart sink. Helen was on the phone with her mysterious lover, arranging to meet for lunch at noon. Harry never imagined that his virtuous wife would have an affair, and he was devastated, his heart filled with despair. To Gibson, this seemed inevitable. He suggested that maybe Helen was just looking for a thrill and didn't necessarily stop loving Harry, trying to comfort him and lift his spirits. That evening at dinner, Harry started subtly probing, hoping Helen would confess on her own, but all he got were lies. Despite his overwhelming anger, he kept his composure, suppressing his rage. The next day at work, against Gibson's strong objections, Harry insisted on using their resources to put Helen under full surveillance. Gibson had no choice but to reluctantly agree. By monitoring Helen's phone calls, Harry learned that she would meet her lover again at noon the next day. It was clear that he had to do something. That night, while Helen was at the gym, he quietly stole her purse and tossed it to Gibson, who had been waiting in the rain for a long time. Later, he made an excuse to take the dog for a walk. Meanwhile, Gibson, following Harry's instructions, placed a GPS tracker and listening devices in the lining of the purse. The next day at noon, as Helen headed to her rendezvous, Harry and Gibson followed discreetly in their car. When she entered a Chinese restaurant in Chinatown, the mysterious lover, Simon, finally showed up. From their subsequent conversation, Harry and Gibson sensed that Simon might be a spy, possibly trying to get to Harry through Helen. But when Simon pulled out a newspaper and falsely claimed that he was the one who chased down a notorious criminal on horseback the previous night, Harry suddenly saw through everything. It turned out that Simon was just a used car salesman who pretended to be a federal agent to seduce married women, deceiving them for both money and sex. A truly despicable person. After uncovering Simon's true identity, Harry found him and pretended to be interested in buying a car. During the test drive, he asked a few probing questions, and to his surprise, Simon proudly shared his tactics for seducing women. But this also made Harry realize that Helen's infidelity was largely his own fault. If he had made time for his wife, the situation wouldn't have deteriorated to this point. His anger began to fade away. That night, however, Gibson intercepted another phone call between Helen and Simon. Harry took the call log and checked it carefully, but found that a crucial page was missing. Gibson initially thought he could brush it off, but Harry, in a fit of rage, smashed the car window with his fist, forcing Gibson to hand over the hidden information. Harry took a closer look and his veins popped with fury. Simon had arranged to meet Helen that night, clearly with ill intentions, but Helen had left without his purse and had no idea where they were supposed to meet. Desperate and beyond reason, Harry falsely claimed that they were dealing with dangerous suspects and illegally deployed a large number of agents, setting up a full surveillance operation overnight. At this moment, Helen and Simon had already met up, and the two were driving out of the city, heading straight for the suburbs. But they were soon spotted by the undercover agents, leading to a comical scene. To create an air of mystery, Simon told Helen to duck down and hide. The agents immediately reported this suspicious behavior. Harry, mistakenly thinking his wife was in a compromising position, decided to call in a helicopter to tail them. Unaware of any of this, Simon drove Helen to a camping site in the countryside. Continuing his charade, he claimed he had to go on a mission to Paris and needed Helen to pose as his wife. While spinning this wild tale, he kept pouring her drinks. Once Helen, now visibly tipsy, agreed, he used increasing authenticity as an excuse to start getting handsy. Just as he was about to succeed, Helen regained her senses and pushed him away. But the next moment, the lights went out. Simon, having never experienced anything like this, stumbled in panic and fell onto Helen. When Harry burst into the room with his team, the scene was a complete misunderstanding that would be impossible to explain away. Enraged, Harry dragged Simon out and slammed him against the car hood. Giving him a rough lesson, Gibson kindly escorted Helen out of the room, but to everyone's surprise, She was so shocked that she refused to cooperate and even began to resist violently. The agents were forced to subdue her using a rifle butt, which broke Harry's heart. In a fit of rage, he punched the agent, leaving him stunned. The operation finally concluded without further incident, and Helen was taken to an interrogation room. Harry and Gibson, hiding behind a two-way mirror, pretended to interrogate her. Using a voice modulator to ask a series of questions, they grilled her on every detail, from how she met Simon to what they did together, not leaving out a single detail. When Harry learned that his wife hadn't actually slept with Simon, his tense heart finally relaxed. He then asked one last question, "Do you still love your husband?" "Yes, I love him deeply," Helen answered. Hearing this, Harry's heart was filled with joy. He decided to give her a surprise. He told Helen that if she was willing to work for the government, she could be released immediately without any charges. As Harry had expected, Helen didn't hesitate to agree. Little did she know that this decision would drag her into a huge maelstrom. Since the night's operation couldn't be made public, Simon was treated very roughly. They took him to the top of a dam, dozens of meters high. Simon, the coward, was so scared he wet his pants. Harry threatened him, saying that if he dared to cheat women again, he would be dismembered and left to die with no remains. Afterward, they left him there and went home to sleep.
Get lost, dipshit.
Completely unaware of what had happened, Helen received a call from Gibson the next day, instructing her to arrive at a designated hotel at 8 p.m. sharp for a mission. Helen, not daring to slack off, followed instructions and picked up an envelope from the front desk. Gibson falsely told her that they needed her to plant a bug in the room to spy on an arms dealer, assuring her that if she completed the task successfully, she would be free to go without any charges. Helen nervously arrived at the hotel room. To increase her chances of successfully completing the mission, she made some quick alterations to her dress, ripping off all unnecessary accessories, transforming herself into a sultry and seductive showgirl. With her heart racing, she stepped into the room, completely unaware that the so-called arms dealer was actually Harry. In their over 10 years of marriage, he had never seen his wife looking so sexy. He quickly played a pre-recorded message. The voice instructed Helen to turn around and slowly remove her clothes, allowing him to silently admire her stunning figure. Harry, getting more carried away, demanded that Helen perform a sexy dance. Barely able to contain his excitement, Harry eventually gave in and asked Helen to lie down on the bed, preparing to reveal the surprise. But just when things were heating up, Helen grabbed the phone and smashed it repeatedly on him, not forgetting to give him a hard kick before storming off. Realizing things had gone horribly wrong, Harry tried to explain, but the real danger was already closing in. Aziz's men suddenly burst into the room with guns drawn. Caught completely off guard, the couple had no time to react and were unfortunately taken hostage by the terrorists. It turned out that ever since Harry and Aziz had clashed, Juno had been looking for an opportunity to strike back. Now, not only did she capture Harry, but also Helen. It was an incredible stroke of luck for her. The couple was taken aboard a private jet, where they were sedated one after the other. By the time they woke up again, they were already deep inside Aziz's stronghold. And to make matters worse, Juno had successfully smuggled 2 nuclear warheads into the United States. Using her antique trading as cover, each warhead had the power of 30 kilotons, more than enough to obliterate a large city. At this moment, Harry could no longer keep his identity a secret, so he decided to come clean and confess everything to Helen. Even though they were in a dire situation, the furious Helen still punched him to vent her anger. Aziz forced Harry to appear on camera to record a video message, threatening the US government to withdraw its troops from his country, or else he would detonate both nuclear bombs. But halfway through his tirade, the cameraman suddenly realized the battery had died but didn't dare interrupt his boss's speech. Aziz delivered his impassioned speech for quite some time, only to find out that none of it had been recorded. As he fumed with anger, his men found the tracker hidden in Helen's purse, revealing that his hideout had been compromised. Following the tracker's signal, the authorities pinpointed Aziz's location at the Castillo Grande on Keys Island, Florida, and immediately mobilized a large force to take action. On the other side, Juno took Harry to an abandoned shack, planning to extract any useful information from him before killing him. A man injected Harry with a full dose of truth serum, and soon enough, he was feeling dizzy and disoriented. Seeing that the drug was taking effect, Juno arrogantly asked if he had any last words.
My handcuffs. I picked them.
Harry's first move was to grab a hook nearby. The guard outside had no idea what was about to happen. The moment he peeked inside, Harry impaled him, piercing through his heart and lungs. Despite the drug coursing through his veins, Harry knew he had to stop Aziz's plan, so he forced himself to approach the warehouse slowly. However, things took a turn for the worse. The guards soon discovered their presence and opened fire, intending to kill them on the spot. The enemies, confident in their numbers and firepower, recklessly advanced. Unaware of Harry's formidable combat skills, he swiftly disarmed one of the guards and fought 3 of them at once without breaking a sweat. The 3-man team was quickly and unexpectedly eliminated, and those who came to support them also fell under Harry's gunfire. A remaining guard grabbed Helen from behind, thinking he could force Harry to surrender, but within seconds, Harry had dealt with all the enemies. The 2 of them then hid on the 2nd floor of the warehouse. At this point, Aziz had already activated the nuclear bomb, setting a 90-minute countdown. To ensure there were no mistakes, he buried the warhead in a pit and covered it with concrete. Since preventing the first nuclear explosion was no longer possible, they had to stop Aziz from taking the 2nd warhead. Harry handed an assault rifle to Helen, instructing her to stay on the 2nd floor and provide covering fire, while he silently descended using a rope. He then pulled a grenade from his pocket and unexpectedly threw it into a cluster of fuel barrels, triggering a massive explosion that turned the warehouse into a sea of flames. Taking advantage of the chaos, Harry shot out the spotlights to conceal his movements and systematically took down several enemies. Aziz, seeing the situation clearly, ordered his men to protect the nuclear warhead and leave immediately. He then regrouped his forces to launch an all-out attack on Harry. Despite fighting back with all his might, Harry soon ran out of bullets in the intense battle. He was then ambushed by a burly man, leaving him in a desperate situation. As more enemies closed in, Helen had no choice but to step up. Her sudden, explosive intervention left even the battle-hardened Harry in awe. To thwart Aziz's plan, Harry charged into the enemy camp with 2 submachine guns in hand. But even with the best equipment, he couldn't withstand the barrage of enemy fire and had to dive for cover to avoid the onslaught. Desperate to break through the encirclement, Harry had a sudden flash of inspiration. He yanked the fuel hose off a tanker truck. He then activated the pump, spraying gasoline everywhere, and ignited it with the muzzle flash from his gun, creating a wall of raging fire. The terrifying blaze sent the enemies scattering in panic, and many who couldn't escape were burned to a crisp. Seeing his men suffering heavy casualties and too terrified to advance, Aziz quickly grabbed a rocket launcher, aimed at the tanker truck, and pulled the trigger. Luckily, Harry managed to dive into the water just in time to avoid the explosion, but Helen, seeing the horrific blast from afar, mistakenly thought her husband had been killed, and her heart sank. Before she could recover from her grief, she was captured by Juno again and taken as a hostage. After Aziz and Juno left, Gibson finally arrived on Key's Island with reinforcements. However, with the first nuclear bomb set to detonate soon, they had to quickly evacuate all the residents and tourists on the island. Seeing Helen in such a desperate state, Juno took the opportunity to taunt and humiliate her, adding insult to injury, completely unaware that her own death was imminent. Upon learning that the convoy was crossing a causeway bridge, Harry immediately reported it to his superiors and requested air support. The Air Force swiftly dispatched 2 Harrier jets, whose pilots opened fire with powerful cannons. A single strafing run obliterated the lead vehicle, turning it into a pile of scrap metal. The terrorists in the following vehicles were terrified and hurriedly grabbed shoulder-launched surface-to-air missiles from the crates. But sometimes, the real danger isn't from your enemies, but from your own side. The clumsy launching duo didn't notice that there was another companion behind them. Thanks to Harry's helpful suggestion, the jets fired 4 precision-guided bombs, destroying the bridge. The scene of the bridge explosion wasn't a special effect but was filmed practically. After filming, the production team spent millions to restore the bridge, and thus, one of the most iconic moments in film history was born. The terrorists barely managed to bring their truck to a halt. Just as they were about to celebrate, a seagull suddenly landed on the hood, disrupting the balance between the front and back of the vehicle. Seeing the 3 cars ahead of them destroyed, Juno panicked and told the driver to hurry up and flee. Helen seized the opportunity and lunged at her. The 2 began to grapple with each other, bullets flying everywhere in the chaos. The driver was tragically shot in the head. In his final moments, his foot slammed down on the accelerator, causing the car to speed out of control. Amidst the jolting ride, Helen struggled desperately to knock the weapon out of Juno's hand. With Juno now panicking and powerless to fight back, Helen landed a solid punch, knocking her down. Helen followed up with several more blows, rendering Juno unconscious. Harry, observing from the helicopter, noticed the commotion, and with a dead-end road quickly approaching, he directed the helicopter to fly low and close to the car. Hanging upside down from the landing gear, he attempted to rescue Helen from the imminent danger, but the car kept swerving left and right, thwarting his attempts. In a critical moment, Helen calmed herself, took a leap of faith, and miraculously grabbed onto Harry's strong arm. Juno, regaining consciousness too late to escape, plummeted into the sea along with the car, dying on impact. After surviving so many perils, Helen was finally rescued, and her resentment towards Harry vanished instantly. As the nuclear bomb was about to explode, all aircraft landed nearby to avoid any incidents, but as expected, the unexpected happened. Gibson received a message from the Miami police. Aziz had taken Dana hostage. Hearing that his daughter was in danger, Harry was immediately overcome with anxiety. Desperate to save his daughter, he ignored all warnings and climbed into the cockpit of a fighter jet, starting the engine. Although his flying skills were a bit rusty, after several adjustments, he managed to get the jet under control and quickly headed towards Miami. Meanwhile, inside the building where Aziz was hiding, the nuclear bomb had already been armed and was ready to detonate at any moment. But before that, Aziz demanded that the television station send a reporter to film a video, so he could broadcast his demands to the world. As he confidently delivered his speech, the reporter noticed something that made Aziz lose face completely. Just as he was preparing to shoot the video, Dana had secretly taken the key and hidden it on herself. Enraged, Aziz ordered his men to kill her on sight and personally led the chase to retrieve the key. An undercover agent disguised as a cameraman saw the opportunity and quickly retrieved a weapon hidden inside the camera, swiftly clearing the room of enemies. With Aziz and his men in pursuit, Dana had nowhere to run and was forced to climb up a tower crane with the key. She threatened Aziz, telling him to back off, or she would throw the key away and ruin his plans. This gave Harry enough time to arrive and rescue her. Accompanied by the roar of engines, Harry made a dramatic entrance in the fighter jet. Seeing all his men being wiped out below, Aziz quickly boarded his helicopter and took off to engage Harry in the air. Meanwhile, Dana was exhausted and nearly slipped and fell, hanging on by her fingertips. It was a hair-raising moment. Just when she was about to lose hope, Harry hovered the jet directly beneath her. He opened the cockpit and encouraged Dana to be brave, assuring her that he would catch her safely. But Aziz wasn't about to let things go smoothly. He fired a burst of bullets at the fighter jet, causing its tail to collide with the crane. Aziz lost his balance and dropped his rifle. Dana was also affected by the impact and was left clinging to the beam with just a few fingers. To make matters worse, the gunner in Aziz's helicopter started firing at them, adding even more danger to the already precarious situation. Harry quickly turned the jet and fired at the helicopter. Although he didn't hit the target, he managed to temporarily drive the enemies away. With no time to waste, he stabilized the jet and finally managed to rescue Dana just before Aziz could reach her. But to Harry's surprise, Aziz showed incredible courage and jumped down from the crane as well, landing on the plane's wing. While Harry was busy saving his daughter, Aziz crawled forward with a knife, attempting to retrieve the key. Realizing he couldn't afford to get entangled in a fight, Harry steered the plane into the side of the building. Aziz, miraculously lucky, found the rifle he had dropped earlier on the tail of the plane. He approached Harry arrogantly, threatening to force the plane to land on the rooftop and demanding the key, or else they would all die together. Father and daughter pretended to comply, but secretly signaled to each other, forming a plan. Once Dana was ready, Harry suddenly swerved the plane violently, catching Aziz off guard and sending him tumbling off the plane, where he ended up hanging onto one of the jet's missiles. In a stroke of perfect timing, the enemy helicopter was hovering right behind the building. Harry immediately had an idea and pressed the launch button. In the film's climax, the jet safely landed, the daring rescue not only averting the nuclear crisis but also restoring Dana's love for her father. From that day on, Harry was no longer consumed by work and made more time for his family. The once strained household finally found a new sense of happiness and harmony. My dear movie enthusiasts, thank you for watching my channel. See you next time.